He told her she was worthless in front of their marriage counselor, married his pregnant mistress 6 weeks later, forced his ex-wife to work 2 jobs just to survive, or so he thought. The day he signed papers for his dream home, the seller's name appeared, Jasmine Carter Williams, his ex-wife. She'd owned everything all along. Now she wanted it back. The marriage counselor's office smelled like lavender and broken promises. Jasmine sat on the edge of the leather couch, her hands folded neatly in her lap, while Derek sprawled on the opposite end, checking his phone every few minutes. Dr. Patterson asked them to share one thing they appreciated about each other, a standard exercise meant to rebuild connection. Derek didn't even look up from his screen. "I appreciate that she'll finally be out of my life soon," he said flatly. Jasmine's breath caught, but she didn't respond. She'd learned that silence was sometimes the only dignity left when words became weapons. Dr. Patterson cleared her throat, clearly uncomfortable, but Derek wasn't finished. He pocketed his phone and leaned forward, his voice cold and clinical. "Let's be honest here. Jasmine is worthless. She has no real career, no ambition, no drive. She sits at home all day doing God knows what on her laptop, calling it consulting work. I've carried this marriage financially and emotionally for 7 years, and I'm done. I deserve better. I deserve someone who matches my level." The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Dr. Patterson started to intervene, but Jasmine raised her hand gently. She stood, gathered her purse, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned back one last time. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Derek." 6 weeks later, Jasmine received the wedding announcement through Instagram. Derek hadn't just moved on, he'd sprinted into a new life with Christine Harrington, blonde, polished, and 8 weeks pregnant according to the timeline Jasmine could piece together. The math was painful but clear. He'd been cheating for months before he'd called her worthless in that office. The wedding photos were everywhere on social media. Derek in a designer tuxedo, Christine in a gown that cost more than most people's cars, and a caption that made Jasmine's stomach turn, "Finally found my queen." Upgraded in every way. The divorce had been swift and brutal. Derek's lawyer had bulldozed through the proceedings, demanding the house, the car, their joint savings, everything. Jasmine's lawyer had urged her to fight back, to reveal her assets, to protect herself. But Jasmine had refused. She signed everything away without contest, asking only to keep her mother's old house in a quiet neighborhood across town. Derek had laughed when his lawyer told him, "That dump, let her keep it. It's falling apart anyway. Probably worth less than my watch." What Derek didn't know was that Jasmine had purchased that house for cash when her mother passed away. She'd also purchased the building his law office occupied, the luxury apartment complex where he now lived with Christine and 73 other properties across the city. But Derek had never asked about her work, never questioned how she spent her days, never wondered why she seemed so calm about finances. He'd simply assumed she contributed nothing because he'd decided she was nothing. Jasmine moved into her mother's house and watched her old life dissolve through social media posts. Derek's colleagues congratulated him at company events. Christine's friends posted photos from bridal showers and gender reveal parties, their captions dripping with casual cruelty. "Can't believe he was married to someone so basic before. Derek finally found someone worthy of him. His first wife must be devastated. Imagine losing this." Jasmine didn't respond to any of it. Instead, she worked. From her mother's kitchen table, she managed a portfolio that would make most hedge fund managers weep with envy. At 25, she'd inherited her grandmother's struggling software company, a small firm on the verge of bankruptcy. Within 3 years, she'd transformed it into a global technology conglomerate. By 30, she was one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country, though almost nobody knew her face. She'd built her empire under her professional name, J.C. Carter, using her mother's maiden name and initials to maintain privacy. When she married Derek, she'd taken his name personally but kept her business identity completely separate. It wasn't about deception, it was about protection. Jasmine had watched too many wealthy people destroy genuine relationships with the poison of money. She'd wanted someone to love her for who she was, not what she had. She'd thought Derek was that person. She'd been catastrophically wrong. Sterling Industries, the company where Derek worked as a regional sales director, had been struggling 3 years ago. Jasmine had quietly acquired a controlling 63% stake through one of her shell corporations, stabilized the company, and protected hundreds of jobs, including Derek's. The Harrington family's real estate empire, which Christine's father ran with aggressive expansion and reckless debt, owed over $400 million to various Carter Investment Trust subsidiaries. Jasmine had structured those loans to be favorable, believing in supporting ambitious businesses. She'd had no idea she was indirectly funding the family her husband would abandon her for. The irony was almost poetic. Derek had left her for wealth and status, never realizing he'd been living in the shadow of her fortune the entire time. Months passed. Jasmine's lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, called regularly with updates and opportunities for legal action. "You could destroy him in court," Patricia said during one call. "We have documentation of adultery, financial manipulation, and emotional abuse. We could revisit the divorce settlement and take him for everything." "No," Jasmine replied, staring out the window of her mother's kitchen. "I don't want revenge. I wanted a partner who valued me. He showed me exactly who he is. That's enough. Then at least protect your assets. If the Harrington family discovers who you are, they'll come after you for favorable treatment or try to manipulate Derek into reconnecting." Jasmine considered this. "Let's wait. I want to see what happens when people think they've won." What happened was an engagement party that cost more than most people earn in a lifetime. The Harrington estate, a sprawling mansion with marble columns and imported chandeliers, was transformed into a wonderland of excess. 300 guests, champagne fountains, a 12-piece orchestra, and ice sculptures that cost $5,000 each. Derek stood at the center of it all, his arm around Christine's expanding waist, accepting congratulations like a king holding court. Jasmine watched from the security footage on her laptop. The Harrington estate was owned by a trust she'd established years ago, and the property management company reported directly to her. She'd planned to sell it eventually, but when she learned it was the venue for Derek's engagement party, she decided to make a personal inspection. Dressed in simple black clothes that could pass for event staff attire, she walked through the service entrances, checking electrical systems and structural details that the property management team had flagged. She was examining a circuit breaker in a hallway near the main ballroom when she heard familiar laughter. Derek emerged from the bathroom, Christine beside him, both slightly drunk and glowing with champagne confidence. They nearly walked past Jasmine before Derek stopped, his brain processing the familiar face in an unexpected context. "Jasmine?" His voice was loud, cutting through the ambient music. Several nearby guests turned to look. "What the hell are you doing here?" Jasmine straightened, closing the electrical panel. "Hello, Derek." Christine's eyes narrowed with predatory curiosity. She'd seen photos of Derek's ex-wife, but meeting her in person clearly sparked something cruel in her champagne-addled brain. "Oh my God, Derek, is she catering? Did they really hire your ex-wife to work your engagement party?" The crowd was gathering now, phones emerging from pockets and purses. Derek's face twisted with something between embarrassment and mockery. "I heard you were struggling after the divorce. Guess I heard right. Working events now? That's what you're doing with your life?" Jasmine met his eyes calmly. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Christine laughed, a sharp sound that echoed off the marble floors. "Derek told me you were barely scraping by. How sad. Here." She fumbled with her clutch, pulling out a handful of folded bills. "For your troubles. Consider it a tip for old time's sake." The crowd tittered. Someone whispered loudly enough to be heard, "Oh my God, this is so awkward." Phones were recording now, the moment already being uploaded to social media with cruel captions. Jasmine looked at the money in Christine's outstretched hand, then back at her face. "I don't need your money. Jasmine said quietly. Derek snorted. Right. Still delusional, still pretending you're something you're not. This is reality, Jasmine. Accept it. You're nobody. You've always been nobody. That's why I left. Jasmine's phone rang, the tone cutting through the tension. She glanced at the screen. Patricia Chen, her lawyer, but the caller ID read simply, Sterling Industries Corporate. She answered, putting it on speaker without thinking, her mind still on the electrical system she'd been inspecting. Miss Carter. The voice on the other end was urgent. It was Gerald Phillips, the CEO of Sterling Industries, a man who reported directly to Jasmine through 3 layers of corporate structure. I apologize for calling during your personal time, but we need your approval on the executive restructuring proposal. The board is waiting on your decision regarding the regional director positions. The hallway went silent. Derek's face had gone pale. Carter, he repeated. Why is my CEO calling you? Why is Gerald Phillips calling you Miss Carter? Jasmine closed her eyes briefly. This wasn't how she'd wanted this moment to unfold, but perhaps there was never going to be a perfect time. Gerald, I'll call you back in 10 minutes. Of course, Miss Carter, and may I say, the board is grateful for your leadership during these transitions. She ended the call. The crowd had swelled to nearly 50 people now, all silent, all staring. Christine's father, Richard Harrington, pushed through the group, his face flushed from alcohol and sudden panic. He was a tall man who commanded rooms through volume and aggression, but his voice shook when he spoke. You're J.C. Carter, he stammered, the Carter who holds our debt. The Carter Investment Trust, Carter. Guests were frantically searching on their phones now. Whispers rippled through the crowd as search results loaded. Reclusive billionaire J.C. Carter identified. Technology mogul J.C. Carter avoids publicity. Mystery investor behind multiple industry acquisitions. The photos were sparse and often outdated, but enough people were making the connection. The quiet woman in simple black clothes was the ghost investor they'd all heard about but never met. Derek was shaking his head, his face cycling through expressions too quickly to track. Denial, confusion, anger, fear. This is insane. There's no way you're... Patricia Chen arrived then, walking through the front entrance with a briefcase and 2 assistants. She'd been waiting in the car, prepared for this possibility. Jasmine had told her it probably wouldn't be necessary, but Patricia had insisted on being ready. She approached the group with the calm efficiency of someone who'd handled 1,000 corporate negotiations. Good evening, Patricia said, addressing Richard Harrington directly. I'm Patricia Chen, legal counsel for J.C. Carter Holdings. I believe there's been some confusion about my client's identity. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. Sterling Industries, currently 63% owned by Carter Holdings LLC, with Ms. Carter as the primary shareholder. Harrington Real Estate Group, $412 million in outstanding loans across various Carter Investment Trust subsidiaries, and this property, the Harrington Estate, deed held in the Jasmine Carter Irrevocable Trust, established 2019. She distributed copies of the documents to Richard Harrington, who took them with trembling hands. Derek reached for one, but his hands were shaking too badly to hold it steady. Christine had gone completely silent. Her earlier cruelty evaporated into shock. This can't be real, Derek whispered. We were married for 7 years. I would have known. You would have what? Jasmine's voice was soft but carried clearly in the silence. You would have noticed? You never asked, Derek. You never asked what I did all day, never questioned how I could afford to contribute equally to our joint account despite what you called my fake consulting work. You never wondered why I seemed so unconcerned about money. You simply decided I was worthless and let that decision define your entire perception of me. Derek's phone rang. He looked at it like it might explode. The caller ID read Gerald Phillips, CEO. He answered with shaking hands, putting it on speaker. Gerald's voice was tight with fury. Derek, what the hell did you do? I just got a call from our primary shareholder asking about your position. Did you divorce J.C. Carter? Did you actually divorce the woman who's been protecting this entire company? She's been maintaining your position for years and you— Derek ended the call, but the damage was complete. The crowd's phones were buzzing with notifications as the story spread. Someone had live-streamed the confrontation. Within minutes, it was everywhere. Billionaire's ex-husband mocks her at engagement party, not knowing she owns everything. Richard Harrington was reading through the loan documents, his face growing redder with each page. These terms, we can't refinance under market conditions. We need your continued support. Christine grabbed his arm. Daddy, what does this mean? It means we're over-leveraged, he said hoarsely. It means if Ms. Carter calls in these loans or refuses to extend them, we lose everything. Derek tried to approach Jasmine, his hands outstretched in a gesture that might have been pleading or disbelief. Jasmine, wait. I didn't know. We can fix this. We can talk about this. You're right, Derek, Jasmine said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. You didn't know. But here's what hurts. You never cared to know. You never saw me as someone worth understanding. You saw what you wanted to see, and when I didn't fit your narrative of success, you decided I was the problem. She turned to Patricia. Please ensure the property management team completes their safety inspection. I want a full report by Monday. Then she looked at Richard Harrington. Your loans will be restructured under standard market terms. No favoritism, no penalties, just business. You'll receive the new terms within 30 days. And Sterling Industries? Derek's voice cracked on the question. We'll continue operating as it has been, Jasmine replied. The executive restructuring has nothing to do with you personally, Derek. It's been in development for 6 months, but your position is no longer under protected status. You'll be evaluated on merit like everyone else. She walked toward the exit, the crowd parting like water. At the doorway, she paused and looked back one final time. I hid who I was because I wanted to be loved for myself, not my bank account. I learned that real wealth isn't what you have in your portfolio. It's knowing your worth, even when the person who vowed to cherish you decides you're worthless. I hope you both find what you're looking for. The video of that night went viral, accumulating millions of views within hours. Public opinion shifted dramatically. The earlier posts mocking Jasmine's poverty were deleted in shame, replaced by articles celebrating her dignity and success. Derek became a symbol of shallow judgment, his name trending alongside terms like gold digger and fool. Christine's family struggled under the weight of restructured loans, forcing them to sell properties and scale back operations. The engagement quietly dissolved 3 months later when the financial pressure became too intense. Derek left Sterling Industries after his position was eliminated in the restructuring. He bounced between jobs, his reputation preceding him, his arrogance finally forced to confront the reality of his choices. He tried reaching out to Jasmine multiple times, emails, letters, even showing up at her mother's house. She never responded. There was nothing left to say. Jasmine stepped into public life slowly, on her own terms. She announced a $100 million foundation dedicated to supporting women entrepreneurs, particularly those from underrepresented communities. The foundation's headquarters would be housed in her mother's old home, fully renovated and expanded. During the ribbon-cutting ceremony, a young girl on a school tour raised her hand. Miss Carter, did it hurt when people underestimated you? Jasmine knelt down to the girl's level, her smile genuine and warm. Every single time, but here's what I learned. Their opinions never changed who I really was. They only revealed who they were. Remember that when people judge you, your worth isn't determined by who can see it. It's determined by what you do when no one's watching. The girl nodded solemnly, then smiled. Jasmine stood looking at the building that would now serve as a launching pad for dreams and second chances. In the end, Derek had been right about one thing. She had been exactly where she needed to be. Not in his shadow, not diminished by his judgment, but standing firmly in her own light, which had been there all along. He'd just been too blind to see it.